Hello to the world of the internet. How is everybody doing tonight? This once again is our fourth Wednesday, and we are here just answering any questions people might have about animal behavior, uh, about pet training, or anything along those lines. Recently, we were able to put out a video that I had fun making. I had done some pet setting for a client. To the world of the internet. Getting some double feed. So we excuse me, we went to a client's house to help them with uh, just some normal pet sitting. They just left town. They needed some help watching their pet, and it's one that we've been working with for a while now. That video was fun to make because I just basically trained the pet to use a puzzle feeder. You can go onto the YouTube channel or the Facebook videos, and you can see how we did that. I thought it was a great example of kind of how and why I do the training that I do. It was a very hands-off approach to teach the animal how to play with the device. I didn't actually touch the device or anything. I just manipulated a couple little things like where I was standing when I asked, and just by doing simple clicks and rewards at the right time, we were able to get the dog. Sassy was her name. We were able to get her to understand how to use the the little puzzle feeder, the device, without actually interfering with the dog themselves. So that's one of the reasons why I use the methods that I do. Getting the animal to choose to do what we want them to do is so much better, so much easier in the long run. You have much higher success rates in general with that methodology. So if you have any questions whatsoever, go ahead, put them into the chat. Last time we were on, there were some issues with the YouTube chat, but it should be working now. If it isn't, direct message me either through Facebook or through something else just to let me know. But it should be working now, and we should be getting all the messages from all the different platforms. So if anybody has any questions or about animal behavior, about anything that's going on, or maybe you just witnessed something with a wild animal that you would like some answers to, I'm happy to answer those as well. It is back in the zoo day. This time period was actually kind of frustrating for biology people because it is fledgling season, which means we have a lot of baby birds on the ground, and everybody sees a baby bird on the ground and instantly thinks they need to help it. The actual best thing to do is to leave it be if you can. And now, obviously, if it's in your backyard and you have dogs that are going to eat it, that's a different situation, but you just call wildlife and parks and they should be able to take care of it. But for the most part, just leave them be and they should be good to go. All right. If anybody has any questions or would like to say hi or anything, go ahead, put that into the chat and we will be happy to answer those questions. Everybody seems to have survived the 4th of July. I was able to put out my older video discussing it because it pretty much nothing really changed. The same methodologies were valid, so we just were able to put that video out there for everybody to use. And I did see that some people use that to great success to desensitize their pups to the issues with the fireworks and things of that nature. All right. Seems to be a little bit quieter night so far. But if you have any questions, go ahead, put them into the chat. We'd be happy to answer them. The one thing that I am worried about coming up, I have a lot of clients that are teachers, just because there's a lot of teachers, and no matter which community you live in, there's a lot more needed. But the thing that's coming up is a lot of people are going more and more back to work, and the dogs have basically been able to, they've been enjoying having us around, basically, is what it comes down to. And with them enjoying us around, that also can be a problem on the other end of the spectrum, which means they will be very upset when they do leave us. So one thing I do suggest for everyone to do is to start slowly leaving their pups in a more standard way, like they would if they were going to work or something along those lines. Just make sure that you are um, getting them ready to be alone again. They, going from you being there 24/7 or nearly 24/7 to 8 hour stints alone is a pretty big jump. So it's better to settle them in slowly as time comes along. Um, Now, as I was saying with that video I put out not too long ago, there was the reason the client needed a pet feeder was, or a puzzle feeder, was because of Zoom meetings. So that was something that you can. Some dogs get those puzzle feeders right away, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's the thing. I'm going to do that." Other dogs, they need a little bit more guidance as to how the puzzle works, because if they fail, they're like, all it is frustrating me. It's just a taunt of all those treats and such in there. But with the but with a little bit of training, they can figure out, oh, this is how this works, and then it becomes a much more engaging method to keep them occupied while you are busy with something such as a Zoom meeting or anything along those lines. All right. So if anybody has any questions whatsoever, just go ahead, put those right in the chat, and I would be happy to answer those for you. The BBB family is growing quite a bit. We seem to be growing at an exponential rate at this point in time, even with the situations that are at hand. We are traveling to all the borders here around Southwest Kansas, Oklahoma, to Colorado as well, to help those peps in need and showing a good way to help them with their needs. Now, some of you might have noticed also, I did recently do a name change. We are now Buckman Best Behaviors instead of Buckman Bestial Behaviors. The whole original idea was just bestial behavior. Bestial means all animals, all beasts, and that way, I kind of, since I was coming from the zoo field, that kind of conveyed that I do work with more than just dogs, which is still true. But most people just don't know that word. It's just a fancy word. So, and a lot of people had it as a tongue twister, and I just thought Buckman Best Behavior was an even better fit, especially as time has passed, and kind of just describes what we do a little bit better. So we came up with that, and we did have an animated little GIF created, and that was actually created by someone at least linked locally. I think they actually have a team all over the place, but they worked very well with us, so I was very happy when we worked with them to create the name, and that was Master Plan Communications. If anybody's interested, they made that animated GIF that you can now see on our Facebook page and a few other things right up there, where on our cover photos and things like that. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead, put them into the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. Now, we will be doing this every fourth Wednesday. I'll come online and answer any questions people might be having. Recently, my family did go on a massive hike with our pups, and some of our dogs used to be able to go long distances. In fact, our second oldest dog, Oscar, he was able to go. He used to run with me when I was big into running, and he would go 12 to 15 miles with me, no problems, and he'd still want to play fetch. Now, this time around, we did about a 9 mile hike, and he was hurting pretty good. Now, it is much more rugged terrain through which we were hiking, and kind of a moderate trail, but it goes to show that dogs age just like us. Because I was thinking how I remember when about 10 years ago, it was much easier for me than it was, and the same process was for him. He always loved those hikes. Now he's much happier just chilling on the couch, it appears. So we might be coming up with new vacation plans for how to incorporate some of our older pups on those trips that we like to take them on. Now, if anybody has any questions whatsoever, go ahead, put them in the chat. If you'd like to say hi, go ahead, say hi in the chat as well. And for any zookeepers that are on here, some from my old zoo days, I'd like to wish you a good, happy National Zookeeper Week. It is National Zookeeper Week, and they are having a rough time in the zoo field right now because Zoo Field relies on those ticket sales of people going in uh, for everything they need, from the keeping the food stores full to maintaining the conservation projects that they're doing. Basically, anything along those lines uh, is funded by the people walking through the door. So even the jobs, and especially, of course, the jobs. So I know a lot of my old colleagues have been furloughed at various facilities and things of that nature, just like pretty much everywhere across the nation right now. So uh, give a good shout out to them and wish them luck and to all their endeavors. All right. If anybody has any questions, I see we have uh, a few people here online. If anybody has any questions, do feel free to put it into the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. It could be anything animal related. It could also just be a nice hello if you'd like to say hi. Be happy to answer any of those. Oh, Sorsha, you coming over to say hi? Come talk to me. Come here. Oh, sweetheart. Yes. Oh. So our three-legged kitty, Sorsha. She likes to cuddle, so yes, and she likes to talk about it. Sorry, do I need to get into a much more comfortable position for you? There you go. So, if anybody has any questions, go ahead, put them down into the chat, and I will be happy to answer them. All right. Now we are happy that the 4th of July has passed and done. Uh, the dogs at my house are not that bad, actually. There's a few of them that don't like it, but I do work on desensitizing them a little bit to it as much as we can. Um, and they generally are pretty good about it. Yes, Sorcha. Okay. What? Do you want me to lean back? Just had to do a little bit special timing with the potty breaks throughout that time period for a couple of them because they just didn't want to go out during the loud bangs. Now, if anybody has any questions on anything that they've seen, been getting a lot of bird questions on social media because it is fledgling season. So you'll be seeing birds in weirder spots because the babies are learning to fly, and a lot of people don't realize that those babies are as big and look a lot like the adults. Usually, you can't tell the difference unless you know what the coloration pattern changes between the babies and the adults are. So, um, you might mistake them for an adult that might be injured or something along those lines. But generally, it is a bird that's learning to fly, and most people don't realize that all birds do spend some time on the ground when they're babies. It's a very dangerous time for them, um, but it is a very normal situation because they, just like a child learning to walk, those baby birds do not learn to fly on their first try. So they tend to hit the ground, and then the parents continue feeding them on the ground, and they until they figure out how to fly. Now, a lot of people do get worried when they see this. It is a very normal process. Nature itself is very harsh. Fewer than 20% of those babies do make it to adulthood. Just very tough time, which is why a lot of them have a lot of babies in hopes that a few of them survive to adulthood and able to make it for the next generation. Now, if you do have one that's in a bad spot and you can't leave it where it is, I would just suggest calling wildlife and parks. They're the only ones that actually can legally deal with wildlife or move them around. So uh, that would be the best bet to do, is just let wildlife and parks handle it at that point in time. All right. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and put that into the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. Anything whatsoever. It can be about pet training, behaviors. Maybe you're having an issue with one of your animals at home. I do work with other animals. I was actually talking with a client the other day, and we were talking about dogs, But then they mentioned something about their cat, and it is very hard for me sometimes to switch out of behavior analysis mode, if you will. So I was actually trying to analyze the behaviors of their cats for them, and it wasn't an issue that was really an issue for them, but we we still had I still had a few theories as to what was actually going on with that animal. Hi, Sorsha. Sorsha just loves the attention. Since we were gone for a few days, she missed out on for a few days worth of attention. So I think she's been trying to get that catch up and maybe even get a little bit ahead if she could. All right. If anybody's there and has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer them. Seems to be a very quiet day on the world of the internets, but that's okay. I will be here until 9 o'clock, and then if I'm here every fourth Wednesday, just answering questions for that anybody might have regarding them. Hi, yes, very good, kitty. Now, one thing I did notice in our community is we do have a new uh, facility that is doing boarding here in Garden City. It is. Let me see if I can find once I can find that name of the location. It also has a groomer attached. Something along little friends dog boarding. That's what it is. Little friends dog boarding. It's actually uh, uh, owned by some people I already knew. They own a body shop, and they wanted to. They had some extra land, and they decided to convert one of their other buildings that they weren't using into a animal boarding facility. And it's actually very nice and works out very well for anybody who has some boarding needs for their pets. And they make sure that the dogs get some walks multiple times a day. So that's a shout out to Little Friends Dog Boarding, because that's something that our community out here in Southwest Kansas really lacks. So we have them adding to the mix. Little Friends Dog Boarding. We have also the Canine Corral and Cimarron for all of those that are maybe able to get a couple travels in or need to go for various events. I need their dogs watched. Those are the place. I definitely recommend those two places. So a shout out to Little Friends Dog Boarding and to Canine Corral for that. Hi, Sorsha. She just always wants the love. All right. I'm going to step away for about 2 seconds because it doesn't look like anybody's online. So if anybody does have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And right when I get back, and Sorsha, I'll come right back to you, sweetheart. I'm not leaving you. Right when I get back, I'll answer those questions. So, oh, yes, tell me all about it, sweetie. She does not like getting moved against her will. Really, no animal does, which is why I'm really all about, well, the term we use is force free, but really it's force minimized because just like a 3-year-old, you can't just let them do whatever they want. But we try to let them do within reason, do the things that they want to do. All right, sweetie, I'll be back. Yes, I'm back, sweet. Yes, tell me about it. So, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put those into the chat. Oh my. Tell me about it. Yes. All right. Okay. Okay. There we go. Oh, yes. Tell me all about it, sweetheart. So, if anybody has any questions, go ahead, put those into the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. And we have, there has been a lot of, uh, a lot of things going on. I do dog sitting. I don't do boarding, as I said earlier. Little Friends Dog Boarding does do boarding, and also Canine Corral. What? Canine Corral is also does dog boarding. I do dog sitting. That started because I do have a number of uh, anxiety or high aggression clients, and since I have the reputation and I know how to handle those individuals, I do dog sitting for those. If other people would like that, I do offer. I started offering it to all of my clients just because there was a trust and a rapport that I had, and it made them feel at ease. So I do offer. I do offer. Excuse me, kitty. Yes, but whenever you go onto my desk, you knock stuff over. Do you want off? You can go over there. There she goes. All right, where do you want to go? I'm not sure if the three-legged kitty wants attention or doesn't want attention. It's to her own thing, I guess. Oh, she wants to go hide under the bed. It looks like. Okay, so if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put those into the chat. I'd be happy to answer those. Uh, Regarding any animal behavior or pet issues that you might be having. So just go ahead, put those into there. Whether it's wildlife related or your pet related, I will answer those to the best of my abilities. So, all right. Okay. All right. Anybody has any questions whatsoever, go ahead and put those into the chat, and I'd be happy to answer those. Just let me know. Whether those questions have to do with your pets, whether those questions have to do with uh, any animals that you've seen, anything weird. Right now, I've been getting, as I said earlier, I've been getting a lot of questions about baby birds. That has to do with my previous career working in the zoo field. Right now is fledgling season, so a lot of animals are uh, starting to come out of the nest and onto the ground, and those animals are um, excuse me, those animals are um, just learning to fly is what's going on. So, the best thing to do is actually leave them be and let their parents take care of them on the ground, because all birds do spend some time on the ground as they learn to fly, just like humans don't learn to walk on the first try. birds don't learn to fly on the first try. So I do suggest leaving them. If they are in a bad spot and they need relocated, I would call wildlife and parks because they're actually the only ones that can legally handle those. If anybody has any questions, go ahead, put those into the chat. I'll be happy to answer them for really about anything. Why I choose the methodologies I do, which I kind of went over a little bit earlier this week. I posted a video of a puzzle feeder, and it was a great example of how to teach an animal to do something without actually touching that animal. In fact, there was like no contact whatsoever with that animal uh, when we were working with them. That animal was it's very fun to watch because you could see her just kind of like do these little side glances, like I figured it out. What was that for? She was just trying to figure out the puzzle of the game, which was the puzzle feeder. But she needed just a little bit of coaxing and teaching how to play with it. And the reasons why I chose to use that hands-off approach is because the point of the whole puzzle feeder was to have her do something without having the owner have to be engaged with the dog. So you could just be across the room and she'll start playing with it. Now I did at the beginning of the stages, we did a slow marker and reward that didn't come from the puzzle feeder itself. But once she figured it out, then the treats would start flowing out of that thing, and she was playing with it on her own. And the whole point of that was because, like a lot of people nowadays, the owner was doing a lot of Zoom meetings, and she's a very needy pup that wanted the owner's attention. So, got the puzzle feeder, but then she didn't figure it out, and she got bored with it because she didn't figure it out fast enough. So I just helped and taught her how to use the puzzle feeder in a way that wasn't that didn't require the owner per se. So if anybody has any questions about animals or behavior or pet training, the methodology that I utilize is called operant conditioning. It is a big fancy psychology word, uh, but it just suggests that there's multiple ways for an animal to learn, particularly four. But we focus on positive reinforcement. Now, I also do dip into what's known as negative punishment. Negative punishment is not what people might think. Negative means you're taking something away. So I don't add anything like the negative punishment would be things like the treats go further away or something along those lines, rather than. But I completely avoid what we call positive punishment, which means you add something, and usually when you add something, that something is pain. So that would be things like choke chains and shock collars and stuff like that. That I do not utilize in any way, shape, or form. Um, then I don't do that for a number of reasons. It has side effects. It is kind of used as a crutch by a lot of people when they're working with animals. In addition, I just find it a little bit less ethical to use those methodologies, because generally you want the animal to, and also you just have better effects, much more. Science shows over and over again that there's much better long-term effects with the when you use positive reinforcement techniques as far as the learning method. Now, when I use negative punishment, as I said, that's taking something away. Oftentimes, it'll be something like the person that they want to see is or when a dog breaks from a stay because somebody came in through the door. Well, they want to see that person who came in through the door. So, the thing I take away is the person. Usually, I shove them out the door, but the timing has to be all right to work in a way that the dog actually correlates that those two things are together. So, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them into the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. Kind of excited to see a few updates coming up. I have a puppy, which I always love working with puppies. Got a lot of puppies. It seems to be puppy season right now, so we have a lot of puppies that we're working with at this point in time, and it's just always fun to watch them learn. And a lot using the positive reinforcement methodologies, you can actually start training puppies much sooner than you could with the more traditional or aversive. Oh, I think the dogs are playing upstairs. Uh, much more aversive traditional methods of training. If you use the, I'm going to have to go see what's going on up there. Someone's playing. Um, the what was I saying? Oh yeah, the positive reinforcement techniques with puppies. You can start much sooner. Sometimes they wouldn't suggest using those aversive training techniques until like 6 or 9 months. But when you're using strictly positive reinforcement methodologies, you can pretty much start training that puppy even while it's still with the mom. You can start as early as 5 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever you need to do to get the pup on the right track, and you have much better long term uh, learning processes with those animals when you use these more positive reinforcement techniques. All right. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and put those into the chat, and I will be happy to answer those. Greywind, I think, is yelling at one of the other dogs because he wants to play, or somebody's petting another dog. He That dog gets a little bit jealous. So whenever anybody else gets attention but him, he has to let the world know. That's the husky side of him. Huskies are some of the most talkingest dogs. There's a lot of breeds that talk, but Huskies are definitely in the top, are definitely up there in the breeds that like to tell you what they are thinking. I have a story of one client. It was the funniest, most communicative method to that they conveyed to were able to convey something to me. So what had happened was I was actually in a discussion with the owner that sometimes we have to use high end rewards because just using the cheap rewards might not be worth it for that individual dog to do and start learning the process. Now over time, as we do as we do the techniques over and over and over again, then it becomes what we call fluent. The behavior becomes fluent. It becomes natural, almost reflexive, and then we don't need it as much, which is why we train. We train so that when we do need it, when we're out on the street, we can ask, and they just boom do it without even thinking. But we were in the earlier process with this pup, and the husky. It was hilarious because the husky went over to me, and I'd been using chicken, which is a high end reward for that animal. It loves chicken, and then I gave then we handed over the behavior over to the owner. Now that she understood to stay on the mat, I believe is what we were teaching her to do. Stay on the mat, we walk away, and she stays there, and she gets rewards. Well, she did it perfectly for the owner, and then he gave her a dry biscuit treat, which usually, I mean, dry biscuit treats they might like them, but they're not great. They're not high value treats. Um, she immediately spit the dry biscuit at the owner's feet, pounced on it twice with her forepaws, then walked over to me and full on pointed at my treat bag. It was the most direct communication I've ever seen a dog do. I'm like, there is no mistaking what this dog is trying to say right now. And that was that those low end rewards were not what it wanted, what she wanted. She wanted the chicken. All right. If anybody has any questions or would like me to tell any more stories about animals, go ahead and put it in the chat. Um, and I would be happy to assist. And I do all sorts of pets. I do work with birds and cats and dogs. And I have one parrot or cockatoo, which is a type of parrot technically. It's a sight of seeing. But one cockatoo client that I was very happy to improve the relationship of everybody in the family. Um, it's so much easier to teach an animal or to ask an animal to do something and have them do it rather than force an animal to do something. How many people have gone into those scenarios where they need the animal to go somewhere, so they start picking it up and then they go and shove it in the crate or whatever they need to do, and then the next time they go do it, the animal's figured out some of what we call the antecedents, the things leading up to the incident, so they get a new behavior, which is run away from you when they start seeing you do that. And people might not realize that they've already warned the animal that it's coming. But we have so many tells and so many little what we call antecedents leading up to that. Even when you go to work, just going around looking for your keys. The dogs note that, and they know exactly what's coming next. So it's very entertaining to watch, but it's also why it's better to work on finding a way to ask them and getting them to do it rather than chasing them down and making them do it. Making an animal usually only works temporarily. It's also why things like spray bottles and stuff like that only work temporarily. They also desensitize to stuff and they can predict it. Or, for example, they might just do a certain behavior. They know the spray bottle is coming out, so they do the behavior until you go to reach for the spray bottle. Then they go run and they go further out of the range. They figure out the range of the spray bottle. So if you just teach them not to, or give them an alternate behavior way for you to ask, it goes a million times better for you in the long run than it is just by forcing them or making them do the things that you want. One mistake that a lot of people do is they try to teach a dog a no. In animal behavior and animal training, there's really, especially in animal behavior science or animal behavior analysis, you can't teach a not behavior, and I think that's where a lot of people fail or make a mistake because they think they can just say no, no, no. Well, you can't teach a not behavior. It's like proving a negative. You can't prove a negative. You can't prove something's not there. Well, same with a teaching a not behavior, as we call it. You can't teach a not behavior because right now I'm not flying. I'm not running. What am I not doing? I'm there's a million things that I'm not doing. So when you ask them to not do something, they don't necessarily understand that. So instead, what we do is we teach them what to do instead, like the jumping. I teach them to sit, and they get rewarded for sitting, such as even if it's just petting, because pet rewards don't just have to be food, but the learners who decides what they what is rewarding to them. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead, put them into the chat, and I will be happy to answer them. If you have anything that whether it's wildlife, whether it's pets, whether it's or if you know a story that you want to hear from my own lips that you might have heard, just go ahead, put it in there. I'll tell a story as well about some of my animal experiences. But if you have any questions, go ahead, put them in there. I'm happy to answer them. It seems to be a little bit of a quiet night. It tends to go back and forth. Last month was a very, very high night indeed. And it looks like I just received a I just received a picture from one of my clients who I do dog watching for. They are off fishing and have acquired a very large, I'm not sure what type of fish that is. Looks like, oh, okay. Not big in the fish world, but I do dog sitting. That actually, originally I just focused on animal behavior and animal training, but I did start adding the dog watching aspect because I do work with a lot of aggression clients or anxiety clients, and I just had a good repertoire with those animals, and since they were already touchy to begin with, I started doing dog sitting for those clients so that way, when they left, they felt safer. The dogs were calmer, and everything going on. And then, of course, I just added it to other clients just because a lot of clients just feel safer when I'm able to watch them. So I just added that as part of business, just more out of requests than anything else. But primarily, we focus on training. Although that puzzle feeder video was caused by, they actually paid a little extra so that I would spend more time with their pup and also work on some other that training type behavior where we taught her to play with the toy correctly, and it only took like 2 or 3 sessions to actually get that dog doing it without touching it. Or all I did was stood over by it and tossed treats towards the device. Then once she was interested in the device because treats started appearing by it, then I went and sat away. Then whenever she interacted, I kept changing what we call the approximation. So the final behavior that you want, you have that in your head. And when you're training, you actually come up with approximations. So lots of little steps. Now, the problem is a lot of people, when they come up with these, they do this already, but they tend to go 5 steps. And it needs to be like lots of little steps. done this a number of times throughout the career. For example, when we taught a lorikeet, which is a small type of parrot that eats nectar, to walk around an arena and greet people, we had to start with just a few steps, and then like one step at a time. And then after she did a couple steps, then we asked for 4 steps. Then the next approximation was okay, you found a post. Now touch your foot on the post. Okay, now touch your foot on the post, but put a little bit of your body towards it. Okay, now now try to get on the post. Okay, now you're on the post. Now try to get over the post. That until eventually we have this bird. I think it was actually 100 foot of rope with posts, kind of a fence post that it would go around, and then we also added like waving and hello, and I'm an Aussie bird because they're Australian. Um, little behaviors along the way, but it starts with those very small approximations. If you go back and look through the video, I marked a number of approximations. Obviously, I couldn't go through every step of the approximation, and the art of the training is both a science and an art. So sometimes I would go forward, and even I will make a mistake, but I notice it right away, so I change and go back because I'm like, oh, I asked for too much, or sometimes the dog goes and surprises me and might go 2 or 3 steps ahead of me, and I might try, or maybe it's just a fluke, and I might have to go, and maybe she didn't actually get it. So I have to kind of keep adjusting the plan as to where I mark it until we finally keep making progress, and then next thing you know, you have the final behavior of what you want the dog to do or animal to do, whether it's the parrot or whether it's the dog or the cat. You take the approximations, and then you just change where that is exactly on the marker. Oh, hi, Namara. You coming in? No, you're going elsewhere. You're going to go say hi to the bunnies. Namara is our eldest dog. She did not get to go on our most recent camping trip. She just does not do well with that. Just like a lot of dogs, as they age, things change, which also comes up a lot with my training. A lot of clients will have older dogs and they'll be like, oh, they've started becoming angrier or more aggressive or more stubborn is a word that I hear a lot. And usually that is actually not so much a stubborn thing, but it's their body's just not the same. So the aggression might be becoming from a point of pain. So oftentimes in those situations when new behaviors are suddenly shown up, we always check with the vet to make sure, give them a walk once over. Now that doesn't, even if the vet doesn't come up with something, it doesn't mean nothing's there. Just means that there's nothing easy to tell. But with things like arthritis, if you're in more pain, you're going to be grumpier. You're going to be snapping at people more often. If you have a migraine more often, things like that. So those with the older dogs, sometimes they have that issue, or they just or the reward they need to go do that behavior. What are you doing, lady? I think she's going to climb on the bed. You can see her try. Nope. She decided to go on the. Oh, hi, Namara. She decided to lay down on the floor instead. She used to be able to jump on that, no problem, but it just takes a little bit more now. Um, but as I said, as they Mary, you want on the bed? As they age, they might need higher end rewards to do some of the things because what they used to do is more painful, so it costs more in their mind. Hi, Namara. What's up, baby? Oh, you're down. You're down for the count. Okay. Technically, her name is Nymeria, and if you catch that reference, go ahead put it into the go ahead put it into the chat if you have any other questions as well. You'll get bonus points from me if you know where her name came from. And she is, how old are you now, old lady? Yeah, look at me. Good, good. She is actually 13 years old now. Uh, so she's definitely getting up there. And her younger brother is, who's not by blood, but she's younger brother in our household. He's about 10 years old, and he's also getting up there in years. So we're losing a lot of our hiking buddies and long distance buddies just to the old age issues. Now, if anybody has any questions about training, about animal behavior, or anything along those lines, if you want to hear a funny zoo story or a funny pet training story, go ahead, put it into the chat, and I'll be happy to answer. We'll be got about 10 more minutes that will be online, and then we will call it, and we will be here back again on the fourth Wednesday of every month at 8 o'clock. Sounds like they're playing upstairs again. That is definitely Greywind playing. Almost every pet that we have in our house is from a book or book series. So if you can catch any of those references, we have Sorsha the cat, we have Nymeria the dog, and I've just talked about Greywind the dog. If you can catch any of those book references, you get bonus points if you put it in the chat. All right. If anybody has any questions, go ahead, let me know, and I'll be happy to answer those. Oh, I just found a fun picture of me back in the day. That is an old picture. I need to find a place to put it. There it is, from the way back in Georgia, pre-beard days, with I believe that was Reebok. Little baby. His mother actually had a mastitis, which is an infection of the mammary gland, so she was not producing milk correctly. And unfortunately, it took a while to notice, because what happened was we noticed his behavior was off when he started coming out of the pouch. And we realized that he had actually had some malnutrition early on, and he actually was mostly blind by the time that we found him. But it takes a while because, well, kangaroos, they keep their babies in the pouch. But we noticed as soon as we noticed, we put him on the correct. We started hand feeding him a formula base instead, and then we also started treating mom, which basically required us to put her on antibiotics, and then we had to massage the mastitis, which is basically an abscess in the in her nipple or mammary gland, and it does not feel good. So she did not enjoy the treatment in any way, shape, or form. But eventually, she did make a full recovery, and she was very happy to go back with her mom at the end of that scenario. But her baby, while she was getting treated, since she couldn't give him any nutrients anymore, he needed to be hand raised the rest of the way, just to make sure that he could get a little bit better. And he did pretty good. He kind of moved around, looking around, trying to see, because we think he had some vision, but he didn't. We definitely know he didn't have the full vision when he made maturity. And they took him to an eye specialist to actually check to see exactly what kind of vision, as best they could, for him. All right, we got a few more minutes left. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them into the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. Looks like we had a few people join in. Looks like Liz and Javier and Cami and Lexi. Thanks for joining us. Deborah, Crystal earlier on. My Uncle Mike. Buffy. All right. Thanks for coming and joining. All right. Uh-oh. What is going on? Okay. All right. Looks like it's going back to normal. Excuse me. Looks like looks like we just had a little bit of a Facebook glitch, but just a quick little restart was able to get that going. We got about 5 more minutes. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in. Hello. Go ahead and put them in, and we'll be happy to answer those. It is, once again, it is Baby Bird season. They are starting to come out of the nest. They are fledglings. They look like adults, unless you know what to look for, such as the slight beak coloration change between them and their parents, or the feather coloration differences between the birds, the baby birds, and the adults. But otherwise, they're the same size as their parents. They will be on the ground because they are learning to fly at this point in time. If you do find them, just call Wildlife and Parks. Well, I shouldn't say every time. Actually, the best thing is to just leave them where they are. If you have to move them because they are just in a really bad spot, then call Wildlife and Parks, because otherwise, if they're on the ground, the parents will continue to feed them right there. So I definitely suggest leaving them at that point in time. All right. We just have a few more minutes. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and put those into the chat, and I'd be happy to answer them. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we're going to have any more questions. It's been a very quiet night tonight, which is okay. That just happens sometimes. Last month was extremely busy, and a lot of people had questions then. Um, for this coming uh, session, I do suggest that we are for what's coming for people going back to their businesses and their work. I do suggest slowly getting your pet used to whatever scenario they will be in. If they're in kennels and things like that, or just you not being there, maybe go outside, go for a walk or something without them, just to get them used to you leaving more and more before you just suddenly drop them off and go, I'm leaving you for 8 hours back to work. Slowly get them progressed, because they've been spoiled now with us being around and they love our attention. So I highly suggest instead just getting them used to that scenario instead, rather than just dropping them into the deep end of their humans are gone, because then they will go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Trust me on that. All right. If anybody has any last questions, we just have a couple minutes left. Go ahead and put those into the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them, no matter what it is that you'd like for me to talk about. All right. It looks like nobody is in the chat, so I think I am going to sign off just a couple minutes early. It's been a very slow night, which I'm guessing a lot of more people are enjoying themselves this evening. We will be on again at 8 p.m. on the fourth Wednesday of every month, to just be here to answer any questions people might have. So feel free to join us, and uh, if you have questions, save them up till then. If you need them answered right away, go ahead, send me a message. You can email me, message me through the business page, Buckman Best Behaviors, or you can go to my website and fill out a form or anything like that. We are scheduling up. We do one-on-one sessions primarily, so go ahead and contact us, and we'll be happy to help you out. You all have a great rest of your night.